Welcome back, virtual circuit riders. Some of you have been asking about why Methodism, or how Methodism, the Methodist Episcopal Church, split into various denominations in the middle part, or the early to middle decades of the 19th century. We're going to answer the first of those questions today on the formation of the first major schism, major underscore, in the Methodist Episcopal Church, the formation of the Methodist Protestant Church. You will recall going back as early as 1792, Methodist preachers had been demanding in General Conference more democratic shared authority and less autocratic rule from strong bishops. We have a strange feature of our polity. The General Conference tends to continue to attract issues that are not resolved in previous General Conferences. They tend to come up again and again if it's an idea that has cultural support. The need for more democracy among preachers found cultural support, increasing cultural support, from the O'Kelly Schism all the way through the 1820s, and in particular in the 1820s, the American culture was moving into a period of populist democratic fervor. American historians call the 1820s, particularly the mid-1820s, the age of Jacksonian populism. Andrew Jackson was the populist democratic man of the people, and so spreading authority throughout the political process meant more power to the people. And so this notion of more power to the people was translated, particularly in the 1820s, the General Conferences, into a move for more power to the preachers, more democratic rights for the preachers. And in fact, from the late 1820s, a loose confederation of Methodist churches called Union Societies emerged, in which these churches, in a loose network with publishing arms, began to argue for the right of preachers to appoint in annual conferences their district superintendents, or the presiding elders, rather than have them appointed by bishops. We can see these union societies as we go to our PowerPoint here. They began to cohere around certain ideas. The man on the right here, Nicholas Sneathen, called the Silver Trumpet of Methodism, traveling companion of Asbury, in the 1820s began to write articles in a magazine called the Wesleyan Repository. He began to argue against the status quo that was presided over by Nathan Bangs, the head of the Methodist Mission Society and really the great ecclesiastical builder of the early 19th century. He wrote against these democratic reforms in the status quo magazine, the Methodist Magazine, which continued to live as the Methodist Quarterly Review and the Quarterly Review even up until just a few years ago, when it went into digital format, published by the General Board of Higher Education and Ministry. So the debate continued to grow in the 1820s. The Union Societies, this parachurch network of Methodist churches, argued that superintendents need to be elected from the floor of annual conference rather than appointed by the bishop, and that full conference membership should be available with voice and vote for local preachers, licensed preachers. Again, an issue that continues to vex us today as local preachers continue to grow in numbers, but are facing in our own General Conference some loss of the ability to celebrate sacraments. So the issue of local preachers and inclusion in a traveling order of itinerant preachers continues to vex us. But in the Union societies, the argument was these local preachers needed full conference membership, which tended to upset the notion of an order of itinerant preachers. And then these Union societies also argued that the laity, which were growing in strength and wealth in the 1820s, controlling the budgets of many of the new station churches, with less itinerancy, the laity began to control more local church politics, and the call was, in the age of Jacksonian democracy, to allow lay representation in conference. That was the Union Society's argument. The Union Societies at the General Conference of 1828 were censured, and our own Bishop John Emery was one who led the drive to disband at General Conference the Union Societies, saying that each local church and these Union Societies that advocate for these lay rights, democratic reform, should cease and desist. Our own John Emery was very much an authoritarian for whom Emory University was named. Well, this motion passed in the General Conference of 1828, and so the Union Societies decided to secede in 1828, forming the Methodist Protestant Church in Baltimore, Maryland, the site where James O. Kelly had actually walked out in 1792. So it took 35 plus years, 36 years, but democratic reform came, and this is a facsimile of the frontispiece of the Constitution. It took 2 years for these Union Societies to come together, and in 1830 they formed the Methodist Protestant Church. Its constitution re-envisioned the connectional system in a more democratic form. It eliminated bishops altogether. Appointments were made by a conference, a committee appointed by the conference of preachers. However, the local preachers in the new constitution lost their ability to have vote. And originally, the Methodist Protestant Church promised that women, to carry the logic of democracy forward, would have membership, but they were denied that in the Constitution. Lay representation in annual and general conferences. Ultimately, the Methodist Protestant Church evolved a sort of president of their general conference, which took on the form of episcopal powers. But the Methodist Protestant Church is an example of Methodists voting with their feet, creating a more egalitarian model of Methodist itinerancy and leadership. This church grew. It was always strongest in the mid-Atlantic states, as you can see here. Baltimore was always its symbolic and real headquarters. You can see it spread into the New England states in the 1840s. It was always strong in the Ohio Valley, and in fact, one of their leading lights, Asa Shin, quipped when the Methodist Protestant Church had begun to kind of peak in terms of its membership. He said, "'Tis true she's going down, but like the beautiful Ohio River, the further it goes downstream, the deeper and broader it becomes." He believed that the democratic impulse would always flow through true Methodists. And the Methodist Protestant Church really gave prophetic witness to democratic egalitarian principles that we continue to work with today. You can see here that it spread to the south in the 1830s. It spread to the Midwest, 1840s, 1850s, even into Wisconsin in 1880 and out west. The MPC had a vigorous mission board. Their work in Japan and China, as well as India, rejoined us when the Methodist Protestant Church reunified with the Northern and Southern Episcopal Methodisms in 1939 in Kansas City, Missouri. We'll talk about the reunification. The MPC has a number of colleges that, again, we inherited back and today are considered, they are Methodist connectional colleges. Adrian College, High Point, Westminster Theological Seminary, which is now Wesley Seminary. Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C. was originally a Methodist Protestant church. You can see here the growth tapped out in the 1930s at 199, roughly 200,000 members. And the MPC brought 191, 863 very democratic members back into a merger in 1939 with the Methodist Episcopal Church North and South. One of the significant contributions that the MPC gave as a witness to American religious life in the late 1800s, the Methodist Protestant Church actually ordained women and often appointed them to local churches. They did not enjoy full conference membership, but they were allowed tacitly through the ordination process to serve local churches. And some of the earliest Methodists educated women in the theological seminaries in the 1880s when they were not allowed to be ordained by the Episcopal Methodisms, sought refuge in the Methodist Protestant Church. And the MPC stands as a testimony to the democratic principles which emerged in American Methodist religious movements, and those streams continue to work today within our United Methodist Church denomination.